Hey Coyotes! Today we are going to go over the presentation that you did for the November faculty meeting. So instead of having our live faculty meeting like we used to do every other month or every month, we're trying to just limit it down to one presentation every other month that you can do on your own time and hopefully make it a little bit easier for you to complete the professional development and get some quality professional development in your own time. So here we're going to go over this presentation today, and I want to review some of the responses with y'all because we all had a lot of great reflections and ideas and a lot of good comments on a lot of the reflections. So we're going to go through this together. Okay, so this presentation was over Seidlitz Strategies, Rigor and Relevance, increasing rigor in the classroom and to increase literacy and achievement. And know that now that you've received this training, the expectation is that you are using these strategies in your classroom. So we have this agenda. We were going to talk about great expectations, classroom strategies, and authentically increasing student achievement. And the main thing to focus on this last point here is the authentically increasing the achievement and realizing the importance of accommodations and scaffolding. Especially for a lot of our students, we have a lot of students that struggle, and so we're really needing to provide those accommodations and supports for them. So here is the essential question. This is the question that you should be able to answer by the end of the presentation. What are the best practices, or what are the best practice research-based strategies that I should be using in my classroom to be a high-quality, effective teacher who delivers authentic, superior instruction to my students? And now that we're looking at possibly receiving an initiative payments in regards to your T-test evaluations, if you look at all of the criteria to meet the exemplar teacher descriptions, then these strategies, what we're teaching right here, is how you reach that. That is how you get to that maximal teaching, the master teacher on your T-test evaluation. And the whole purpose of being here is to help students achieve and to teach them. And so if you're thinking about that, these are the strategies that will help you be able to do that in your classroom. So our objectives were teachers will understand campus expectations, you will glean more ideas on instructional strategies, and you will learn how to increase authentic achievement. So we talked about the purpose of grades, and here's where I want to read some of your reflections. So what is the purpose of grades? Are grades important, and why is the summative weighed more than a formative? So on number 2, are grades important? Mr. Whitehead said, yes, they are important, but they're not the only assessment to show student achievement. And I agree with that completely. We look at the whole student. So we look at, are they learning? Are they increasing their skills? Are they able to demonstrate what they've learned? And so grades are the reflection of that achievement, and they assess, but sometimes it's subjective. We want to make sure that we're quantifying everything, but we can also quantify subjective assessment of our students. So making sure that we are holistically grading the student and not just focusing on every little thing that they got wrong. Same thing, Mr. Young, on number 3, why is the summative weighed more than a formative? And he said formative grades are to improve teaching, and that's exactly part of the purpose. When you look at the formative grades and you see what the students achieved, you can focus on areas that they achieved highly on. You can look back and say, oh, everybody got this wrong, so I must have not covered that very well, and that gives you a way to reflect on your own practice and then go back and reteach things that they're not achieving on based on the formative grades. Ms. Phyllis said, while summatives is more important than formative grades because the formative grades are a snapshot of learning and progress, and I love that in progress because they haven't reached the final learning goals yet or objectives. That's where we get to the summative grade. That's where the summative grade's in. And she says summative grades show the final outcome of teaching. So I love the snapshot idea, and a couple of y'all actually said that, and it gives you that picture of what they have right now, and are they on their way to mastering that content so that at the end they can demonstrate it fluidly. They can demonstrate what they know. Mrs. Blakely said on number 1, what is the purpose of grades? Mrs. Blakely said, the purpose of grades is to hold students accountable for their learning. Yes, absolutely. We want to make sure that they are learning as we go, so they're not waiting till the last minute. And this also helps us to know if they're struggling. If we've got a student who's failing all the formative grades, why are they failing? And we need to make sure that we're reaching out to them and saying, is there something that you don't understand? Is there something that I can help you with? What do I need to clarify for you so that you can understand this and get this and learn this? Number 1, Mr. Martin said, the purpose of grades is to create a clear picture of what the student has learned without the influence of other non-academic factors. And I love that wording there, without the influence of non-academic factors. So we're looking at the, and that's where the authenticity comes in. Are they authentically learning it? And are we looking at those other non-authentic factors? For number 3, one teacher commented that we're expected to pass kids no matter what. Well, that's not true. And another teacher made a comment that if teachers are just making up grades, then grades mean nothing. And that is totally true. So we're not expected to pass kids no matter what. We are expected to teach them what they need to know so that they can master the content, and then the grades should demonstrate the mastery of what they've learned. And that's kind of one thing that I try to keep reiterating, is that point that we want them to master it, and we need to be able to show, they need to be able to demonstrate that they've mastered it, and that's part of the reason why we give those grades. And then we had another comment here. Sorry, I'm shuffling around papers. We had another comment that number 1, Mr. Harris said, the purpose of grades is to inform students and parents of progress. And yes, we want to make sure that parents are in the loop, that we're informing everybody of the progress of the students, how they're doing in the class, and whether or not they're learning the material that we need them to learn. Okay, so let's move on. Thank you, everybody, for your comments. So here, the purpose of grades, as a society, we've been taught to associate numbers as a representation of value. And here, grades are how we place that value on what they're learning, the quantity and quality of their knowledge. Are they learning what they're supposed to learn? So it's not to quantify the percentage, the purpose is to quantify the percentage of mastery, not just to give them a grade, not just so that we can put something in the grade book, but to authentically assess what are they learning and how are they learning it. Given grades do not calculate mastery and are a misrepresentation of how well a student has learned content in a class. So giving grades is an injustice to students. They shouldn't be just made up. They shouldn't be subjective, completely subjective, opinion-based, or any of that. They really need to be focused on the mastery of the content, their knowledge. What do they know and how are they able to demonstrate it? So formative grades, this is kind of your basic knowledge base of grades. Formative grades are those progress checks. Do they understand the concepts? Do they know the information? And then you need to take this data, process it, and this will help you plan out what they need to know. So if students aren't learning what you need them to know, or they're struggling, or they have misconceptions, this is where we need to scaffold, and you can focus on weak areas and focus areas that you need to teach on. And then summative grades should assess the entire learning. So at the end of the learning, at the end of your units, this is where you assess for the mastery, the cumulative mastery of that knowledge, and then you quantify that through the summative grade. So best practices, number of grades. The best practice for number of grades is a minimum of 3 formatives per summative. And why do we say 3 formatives? Well, this gives you the data that you need to be able to look through and say, again, answer that question, are they learning what they need to learn? What are the weak areas? What are some areas that I need to improve on? Where do I need to scaffold? And you can use this data to inform your instruction so that it's data-based instruction, data-based planning. And then you give that summative every 2 weeks. So this basically gives you almost 2 weeks to teach on a unit, and then at the end of the unit giving that summative. And I realize that some of the curriculum that y'all are giving, you already have dates and you already have a scope and sequence, and just making sure that you're following that, but you can add extra formatives in there if you need to make sure that you're getting that data that you need, and you're giving them opportunity to demonstrate learning along the way. So grading period, best practices to ensure that an authentic grade is given to students is for during the 6-week grading period, 9 formatives and 3 summatives. So again, following that pattern of every 2 weeks having a minimum of 3 formatives and 1 summative. Grades should be entered into the gradebook within 5 days of the date of the assignment or test was given, and make sure that you are following this. It is really hard for students to understand where they are, and parents also. We get this complaint all the time. It's hard for them to know how a student is progressing in a class if the grades aren't in the grade book. So hopefully, even if a grade isn't in the grade book, hopefully by this time you have given them feedback and input so that way they can improve. But you need to make sure that you are giving that instant, that quick, real-time feedback, and that you're putting those grades in so students can monitor their progress. And so making sure that you need to make sure that you're getting those grades in within the 5 days. And then grade integrity. Integrity means no cheating and authentic assessment of student knowledge. Teachers should use GoGuardian while doing their best and do their best to monitor. And I realize teachers are juggling 100 things. You're taking attendance while monitoring virtual and in-class students. You're trying to teach while also monitoring GoGuardian. You have so many things that you're juggling. So this is where I'm just going to say do your best because I know y'all have a lot on your plate. Here is the most important part of grading: feedback, input, giving the teacher, or giving the students the feedback that they know to be able to make improvements. So here is where you answer the questions, or you give them the opportunity to know, why did I get this wrong? What is the correct answer? How do you do this? Why is it not? So if you had like a multiple choice and you had answers A, B, and C, and somebody answered B, the correct answer was C, the students can look and say, well, why is it not C? I chose C because this, and then you can explain why, or you can explain why the other answer is the right answer. So feedback is part of the learning process. They can take that, they process it in their minds, and then they're able to do better the next time. So here, what is a correct statement or incorrect statement? A teacher should give a grade to a student so that the student does not fail. That is incorrect. We don't give grades. And especially if a student is failing, we need to look and ask, why is that student failing? And how can we support the student so that they can authentically learn and achieve? Grades are the main indicator of how well a student knows the content, and this is, yes, this demonstrates, this is that quantified value of their mastery of the content. So we want to calculate that mastery of content. Calculated grades maintain an equitable reflection of learning for all students. Yes, absolutely. We don't want opinion-based grades. We don't want giving grades, because then let's say that a student is doing really well in class and then all of a sudden, and you've been giving them grades and then all of a sudden they're not, and then they're not making good grades. Well, you did not calculate the mastery of the content, and then a student can say, well, so-and-so's picking on me because now I'm making really bad grades and I never really learned it in the first place because the grades they gave me at the beginning were just fake grades. So we don't want that poor reflection on ourselves. We need to be able to say, if a student says, why did you give me this grade? You say, I didn't give you a grade. I calculated the mastery of the content, and here's what I calculated from your grade. This is what you made, and here are ways to improve. And so this keeps it equitable. It levels the playing field for all students, and you're giving them all the same opportunity to make good grades. Formative grades give a teacher information about the progress of students. Teachers should use this information to plan for learning needs of the students. Absolutely. So again, if a student is struggling and they're failing all the formative assessments, you can look at that and ask the questions. Why are they failing? What are the weak areas? What are areas that I need to focus on? And what is some scaffolding that I could do to help the student learn? And then the last one, participation in class can be calculated to demonstrate mastery of a subject. No, not really. Now, sometimes you can, if you're participating in an activity and you're making sure that they're participating and that they're not just slacking off in class, you can do that by activities such as bell work. Are they completing the bell work? If you did a Socratic seminar, did everybody contribute and did everybody state something? Those are types of participation activities that you can do that still help you glean what they are learning, and you can still assess their learning and quantify that mastery of the content